I know everybody's familiar with at least parts of the website. What I wanted to go over just very quickly were what some of the features of the website are and how they operate. Starting out with the home page, you will notice that we are now on Twitter, drug kicking and screaming into social networking. But if anyone wants to follow us on Twitter, we're called NY Invasive Info, all one word. And you can get to it directly from the button on the home page. What I do want to point out, though, and these are things which right now I rely on you to send me information, but in the future as we transition to a new server that runs SharePoint, we'll be able to give each of the prisms one account on it with one password, but you'll be able to go in and use an online form to enter information on calendar events, news events, things like that. And we can have it set up to either go onto the main news page or onto a Prism news page. To give you an example of the main news page, Leslie sent out an article about the rock snot presentation that she's giving that's coming up on July 8th. We put that on the site this morning over events. If you click more, it takes you to what is actually our calendar page. The rock snot presentation now shows up with a very brief explanation of what it is, and you can click and bring up the PDF of the actual flyer. So that kind of thing can be there. We can have it set up so that if there's a contact person we can do a mail to, we can have any kind of links built into it that we want to. We can also set it up, though, so that instead of going to the general news page, it goes directly to a Prisms page. For example, the Adirondack Forum, which is showing up as an event. Clicking on that one takes you to basically what looks like the flyer for it, and then the link directly to the ADK Invasives website. But instead of that being on our general NYS.info page, it's on what we've got set up as the APIP page. So we can do either one of those. We can have it linked to a general calendar page, or we can have it linked to a Prisms web page. Same thing with news events. We haven't been getting very many of them submitted to us, so right now we only have information on the insect pests DVD and on the New York State comments on the Coast Guard ballast water exchange. Some of the other things we have right now, we're doing some special work on emerald ash borers. We've got a resource page which has a number of different things on it. What's Extension doing? What's the quarantine doing? What is DEC up to? A lot of protocols, information on research, who's doing what at the federal and the state levels. And then up on the sidebar, we've got, again, a number of different resources going on. We also have emerald ash borer information over under the species profiles page under insects, and that gives you a fairly detailed description of the critter. It gives you the most recent maps of locations. It gives you the threat map that is currently active for New York State, and those types of things. Let's see what else. While I'm talking about species profiles, the species profile menu always stays active regardless of what page you're on, unless you go to a specific dedicated Prism web page. The profiles, they're not all filled out yet, so some of them you're not going to get anything when you do a rollover. A typical plant page would look like the buckthorn one does, with information on the origin, the biology, identification, the impacts of the species, how to prevent it and control it, references, and if we can, most of them are linked either to other websites, or if it's a publication that we've got running on our server, we can link it directly to that. We typically, for photographs of species, have them so that you can see it in a large format rather than just the thumbnail. For important ones like giant hogweed, we have fairly detailed pages, particularly on things like identification. How do you tell hogweed from other look-alike plants, that sort of thing. And then links to, I think this one's got the DEC hotline number down at the bottom. So that would be a fairly detailed sheet on a species. Some of the species have much less than that, such as fishhook water flea. Does not have all of that detail. It's much more of a overview on the species itself, where it's found, a map that we try to keep up to date, and a little bit of the biology on the species. Other resources, though, that we're running right now, we have taken over the National Aquatic Invasive Species database, and that one is showing all of the species that were in the original species database. They can be searched full text by going to a full text search feature that we've got, or they can be searched using the search tree that's built in, and in some cases you can go really deep in the search tree. For example, for Dreissena, taxonomy will give you whatever hits come up under that specific one, but if there is another deeper thread to follow, you can go on into that and it will give you what the hits are. Some of the twigs go as deep as 27 clicks deep, so there's a lot of information there, and it tells you where the original paper is, or if you can get it from us here at the Clearinghouse. One of the other resources that are there, and which is constantly growing, are the invasive species risk assessments. Now, right now we've got the information on how they were developed. We've got the ranking system for evaluating plant species is available in a PDF form. The assessment forms are all there. And then all of the species that have currently been assessed are here. Right now they're listed alphabetically by species name. When we get this transitioned over to the SharePoint server, they should be able to be searched by scientific name. I'm not sure about common name because of a lot of conflicts there. But right now all the plants that have been assessed are there. And if you click on species profile, it gives you the entire evaluation that was done to come up with whatever the ranking was for that species. So that information is there when DEC starts feeding us information on animals, insects, or whatever they want to send us. New tables will be built and the information will be put into those. So those are a couple of the big resources that are available. You can also get from there to the Invasive Species Research Institute's website and to the IMAP Invasives website. Invasive Species Bookshelf, we're in the process of building the search engine for that and the data entry. And that is going to have by species all of the educational materials we can find, fact sheets, information bulletins, posters, identification cards, and from wherever we can get them, as long as they are good, credible sources. In some cases, clicking on them will take you to the original host to download them. In cases where we can get the permission to put them on our website, which speeds things up, when you click on it, you'll get a downloadable print-on-demand version directly from us. State and federal, we have state policies available on here talking about what the different state laws and rules and regulations are, talking about what the Office of Invasive Species Coordination is. When you start looking deeper into it, we're developing links for state agencies. So for DEC, for example, we're trying to get all of the DEC websites, web pages available with a 1 or 2 sentence description of what that page is. Same thing for the Ag and Markets, Department of Transportation. We don't have everything that they've got yet. We're going to be adding to it in the near future. Canal Authority and Parks and Rec are also in the process of being put together and will be added onto this one when we've got information on them. So that's some of the things that are under state and federal. Tools is basically the calendar and the newsroom. Anything that shows up on either of those pages is also linked from the home page. And then things that you folks are going to be most interested in is the prisms. We have the information on generally talking about the prisms. We have information on the monthly conference calls. The PDF listing the dates and topics are all up there. The names of all the listservs, the map, that sort of thing. And prism contacts, which we would like to, if people have changed, we'd like to get the new names. A typical PRISM website that we're not hosting an actual website, but we've got a page up for. A typical one would be something like APIP's page, giving coming events, news from the PRISM, minutes of past meetings, reports that are available. All of these have been converted into PDFs, and if they had links in them as the originals, the links are functional right now. One that's a little bit less formal looking, but which has a lot of information in it, would be Western. Some of their news is in there. They've got resources in there, though, that are also available, such as the terrestrial invasive plants. You can get at these different presentations that were developed and given at the Allegheny State Park meeting that was held. The one that's the most exciting, I would have to say, is the LISMA page, which is actually the PRISM's full web page and is being hosted by us. You'll notice a totally different look. What the left-hand navigation bar is the PRISM's navigation bar. The horizontal one remains as NYS.info's bar, or you can search it using the graphics that they've got on. They did a nice job on coming up with information talking about who the PRISM itself is, information on the meetings. We can get to those from the meetings page with all of their meetings listed, current projects that the PRISM is working on, the different prevention zones, different things that they've been working on over the years and are still active. The Invasive Species Prevention Zone whole project is listed up here, the benefits, and then subpages, the criteria, how to create an invasive species prevention zone, a list of the prevention zones that exist with links to specifically to those sites. The plant assessments that were done, LISMA and the Scientific Review Board did both state assessments and Long Island PRISM specific assessments. The ones that are there and were done specifically for the PRISM are in their own table, and by clicking on the side you get the shorter PRISM specific form that augments the information that's on the state forms but for that specific PRISM. The legislation that has taken place on Long Island is all explained and linked to the legislation itself. Their information on native alternatives with the fact sheets that they had developed are all there and available directly through their website. And information on what people can do, with fact sheets on what folks can do for a number of species, identification guides, things like that, a list of the banned species. And finally, the PRISM developed a very extensive links system with a number of different categories, including volunteer opportunities, legislation, economic impact, those sorts of things. So that's what a PRISM's actual website can look like. If it's something that you want a slightly different feel to the website, we can do that. The only thing that we ask is that we would keep the horizontal bar, which would be a way of getting back directly to NYS.info. And we're in the process now. We will be putting our little logo, which is a little square green box with NYS.info in it, will be down at the bottom of each page, and it will say hosted by NYS.info, but we'll try and keep it down here out of sight as long as you're on the rest of the page, so that that page really is the PRISM's web page. Once we're on SharePoint, we hopefully will have it set up so that the PRISM will be able to log in directly and drag and drop from Word documents to put content in. We're trying to make it as easy as we can so that we don't have to do the work and charge the PRISM. The PRISM will be able to actually do a lot of its own data entry. So that's going to make it a lot easier as we move forward in the future if PRISMs do want to have their websites hosted. The LISMA website has cost over the last year or so since we started it about $1,500 or $1,600 to program that. And right now, adding content is fairly inexpensive, quite cheap actually. And once it's on the SharePoint website and the PRISM can do their own entry, for the most part, it should eliminate almost all the costs. There'd be a nominal, probably $100 a year or something like that, cost for hosting it so that we can pay for server time. But it'll be, once it's set up, it'll be fairly cheap. That's about what I've got to say directly on the website. The website is ours. It's New York State's. We really want to have as much information in here on what's going on in the state as we possibly can, and that means relying on you folks out there in the PRISMs to get as much information into us as you can. Same thing with the other partners. Events that are coming up, calendar events. Having a calendar is useless if we don't have events to put into it, and news items. We can typically get things up fairly quickly. The rock snot presentation being an example of that. I think Leslie just sent that out this morning. So that's pretty much what I've got to say on it, Leslie.
Thank you, Chuck. I'm in the process of unmuting folks. I did have a presentation that should take on the order of 10 minutes. So while I'm unmuting folks, as you guys see that you're unmuted, if you've got the screen on, I'll hit I share my desktop. Thank you, Chuck. I thought I knew all of what was going on at Clearinghouse, but it's been, there's a lot more than I thought.
The exciting thing is that it is one of the most active sites on the server, and we have been adding about 25 to 30% to visitors every quarter. We're up to the point where I forget the last numbers, but we were well over 500,000 hits. I think it was something like 700,000 hits during the quarter. They're coming from all over the world, all over the United States, and they are hitting everything: species profiles, risk assessments, PRISM pages. The entire site is being used. So it's really exciting how the site has grown by leaps and bounds, and the more content we get in there, the better, and that's going to have to come from the PRISMs and the other partners.